Hello. Hello, can you hear now?
Yeah, turn your audio on. All right.
Can you hear?
Welcome everyone. This is the second take on the new studio that we're in, and obviously the sound didn't work the first time.
Yeah.
So we are learning.
Does it work now though?
Hopefully, can you if you're watching in the chat, can you let us know? Are you hearing some sound now? I think you are. It appears we fixed the technical difficulties.
Okay, sweet.
All right.
Thanks, Jefferson.
Let's start over.
Yeah, let's start over.
This is AI Agents Hour. I'm Shane. This is Avi.
Hello.
And as you can see, we had some technical difficulties. We're in a new place. We're in Avi's apartment. I'm in SF this week, so we're in person, which is rare. And the good thing about this is I get to redo the entire intro. And the first one was a practice run because we had some technical difficulties, and now we're up and running. But please leave us a review on Spotify, 5 stars only, please. Otherwise, find something else to do. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate that. That helps more people find the show. And if you are watching this live, as many of you have already, realized, you can leave comments and we hear them like, hey, I can't hear the sound.
Yeah, like and Maravich.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you for letting us know. We now hopefully have it fixed.
And if what I'm about to say is for the person listening to this weeks and months from now, and you're just listening to the audio, there'll be a nice little Easter egg for you of us miming stuff on video. So you'll have fun then.
Yeah, we will maybe cut that out before we post that to the audio only version. But we appreciate you all being here. We got a jam-packed show today. We're going to talk about some evals. We're going to talk about AI news like we do every week. We're going to talk with Laurie from Arize. We got Lio and Kevin from Defang, so you can learn about them and what they're doing. And yeah, please leave comments and questions along the way, and this is going to be a fun show.
Yeah.
But before we jump into it, we had a nice little surprise. So I guess if you're listening, let me know if you're a Spotify user. But every year you get this end-of-year Spotify Wrapped, and it tells you all your favorite songs, your favorite artists. It's kind of cool. A lot of people look forward to it. Some of my friends share, the surprises or, the expected results sometimes.
What was your listening age?
39.
Oh, shit.
I'm old.
Dude, mine's 23.
You listen to the new stuff. I listen to all the old stuff. So, but anyways, one of the things that I didn't know is you actually, if you're a creator, you get a Spotify Wrapped for creators. And so you want to take a look at our Spotify Wrapped?
Let's do it.
So you're going to get a little treat. You're going to figure out, and if you like what you see, please go leave us that review if you haven't already. All right. So let's hit it. And let's do, so you can see our reaction to this along the way. So 2025 was the year
of agents.
The year of agents. This year, one episode rose above the rest. I think I overshot it. So if you're looking for an episode, go, figure out if Lovable's dying. Super Agent, dude, that was the
condom episode.
Yeah, if you don't know what that means, you might want to go rewatch that episode. It's still getting quoted, apparently. Who knew?
How do they measure that, I wonder? That's cool.
Yeah, and that says that your show was in the top 20% of videos on Spotify. And so, listen, if we're in the top 20%, you saw the quality of the production that we are putting out. I'm questioning others' ability.
There must be a lot of trash on Spotify, dude, honestly.
But hey, I'm happy to be there.
Yeah.
Happy to be in the top 20%. It wouldn't be possible without you listening after the fact. And obviously, we appreciate you listening live too. We had 23 different countries.
Whoa. That's
cool. Our top countries, Australia, Poland, Canada, United States, and Belgium.
Dang.
Ward on our team's in Belgium. I think he's been telling all his friends.
That's crazy. That's all Ward's listens, right?
Yeah, actually, Ward just leaves it on when he goes to sleep. Puts him to sleep at night. Our fans, our fans like Future, Bad Bunny.
Bad.
Okay. Our fans like some audiobooks.
Death by Astonishment.
I have not listened to that, so all right.
Bunch of sociopaths listen to this show.
Yeah, and then your favorite podcast that you listen to if you listen to our show. So
no comedy podcast on there, huh?
There you go. might want to frame this. We had a marathon show. Fans listened to you longer than 79% of other shows. Okay.
There must be terrible shows out there, dude.
An instant hit show. It was your debut season was more popular than 85% of other shows.
How many goobs are having podcasts?
And then it was a most shared show. So you received more shares than 70%, 76% of other shows. So I don't know.
Dude, I think they're bullshitting.
I think they make these numbers up. But hey,
it's cool.
You know,
it's
we are here, and yeah, we're gonna talk some evals here in a bit. But before we do that, one other thing. So last week you monologued about Opus 4.5. Yeah. If you're watching this, I'm curious. Have you played around with Opus 4.5? Because I finally had the chance to dive in, and I gotta say, like, you did not overhype it. It is living up to, set your expectations appropriately, right? It's not going to do everything for you, but I felt like it was a state change. It is significantly better in my opinion, which is kind of wild because I felt like going from when they went from 3 to 3.5, that was like a state change, and now 4 to 4.5. So the 0.5 releases are apparently more important than the full releases. I don't know, but try out Opus if you haven't. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think some providers give it the same price as Sonnet. So if you haven't tried it, you might as well for the same price. But yeah, I'm Opus pilled, and I think all of us are now.
Yeah, now I'm basically, I'm surprised I'm not doing it right now, but I basically have a Git work tree running, doing something with Opus at any point in time. Like between customer calls or meetings, or obviously when I'm writing code, I'm doing multiple, but usually have just one running all the time on something. So I would recommend you give it a shot and see if you can do at least, a large percentage of things that you typically would have to do yourself.
Yeah. Parallel agents.
And one other thing that I just thought, some of you might be able to relate to, and maybe not, but we're in SF this week. So we got invited to an event, like a launch party. So we were previously in YC last year in the winter batch. We got invited to this launch party event, and we know the hosts, and so we thought that'd be cool. And I sent it over to Abby, and he pointed out it's a black tie event. I don't own a black tie. And so I immediately went to ChatGPT and I said, what's the dress expectation here? And it said black bow tie, which is even worse in my opinion.
Oh shit, it's bow ties?
That's what ChatGPT told me. If you show up in a normal tie to an event like this, you're going to be a goob.
Oh my God. I only have like a black tie.
I have a black normal tie, which I brought, but I don't know. So you tell me, if you're in the chat, if you're going to a black tie event, does it have to be a bow tie? ChatGPT was pretty convinced it needed to be, but can't trust it.
Well, on the invitation, it says gowns and suits. That is interesting.
Yeah. So anyways, that's what we'll be doing this week. Let's jump into it. We're going to pull in, we have Alex from the Mastra team coming in here, and he's got a talk coming up. So Alex, if you're there, we're going to pull you in here in just a second. But we want to talk a little bit about evals. And so before we pull him in, there was a post that I think, I don't know who shared it. Maybe you shared it to me. You don't understand evals. Everybody in eval should read this. So Maxime posted this, and of course I dug in. It got quite a bit of traction, and it is an eval guidebook V2. So let's take a look at this. So if you're looking for a place to start learning about evals, this is a good place to go. So first of all, it kind of talks about the life cycle. It talks about the problem that it's trying to solve. And of course, we could spend an hour in going through this. You can see the scroll bar here. It is comprehensive.
Yep.
So we're going to talk a little bit about our opinions on evals. Alex is going to talk about a talk that he's doing on evals, and he has some questions for us. I wouldn't claim that we're the experts, but we know a thing or two. But if you want to be an expert, I would recommend you start here. It's a good place to get started. And I think Alex is having some issues here with his mic. He sent me a message and said, I'm having mic issues, but not as bad as you. So, so we'll see if he joins. But let's talk a little bit about, let's set the stage. What are evals? When should you use them? Because we've talked in the past around like, should you actually even use evals? A lot of the coding agent companies barely have evals or just started introducing evals.
So I think what are evals? And we've done workshops about this too, but quick thing is it's a loop that you put yourself on. That is, the goal is to improve your application. So whatever you're building, could be, let's say, a veterinary app that, you know, listens to vets or something, like a vertical agent like that. Well, how do you know that that agent is doing well? It may be doing well in your trial and tests of it locally or in your prod. And that usually happens to most AI apps, is like when you're building, like things are going really well. But the minute you deploy to production, real users with their real prompts and their real behaviors start using your application. And then the things that you tested in a silo are not actually happening in reality, and you don't necessarily know. So, but then let's say you measure it and you know that it's screwing up all this time. How do you fix it? So that's like the part of evals, which is, you know, tracking data, figuring out why things are going wrong, making adjustments, tracking, and then the infinity loop of that.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I guess I've seen as we've talked with more customers who are starting to do evals is most people prototype without any kind of evals in place, right? That's just the way we think about it, right? You know, everyone wants to talk about test-driven development if you're an engineer, but most people don't do it, right? They want to see something working and then they write the tests later. Evals typically follows the same thing, at least in practice from what I've seen. But what we often see is if you're doing something that requires, it's harder to determine if it's right or wrong. Like, you know, a lot of times when you're writing code, there's not one right way to write code. As long as you get the result, you could go about it in a lot of different ways. And we could all argue what's good or what's bad, but you might be able to get the same. Abby and I could write get the same result by doing two completely different things.
Yeah.
And so in those cases, oftentimes we don't see people grab evals or use evals until much later. But if you have something that has more regulatory burden, if you're building a finance agent, if you're building something that's legal, something that deals with shipping or like e-commerce, like things that are touching things that if the cost of failure is really bad, if it messes up, that's when evals become a lot more important. And you shouldn't wait till you're trying to get to production to start writing evals. You probably need to think about it much sooner in the process. And it typically starts with that data set. Abby kind of talked about it. And then you're building that loop so you can continue to improve things and make sure that over time you're not getting worse, you're actually getting better.
I think we bias too much on what coding agents are doing. And because we are the users of coding agents, we can evaluate it every day, right? Like sometimes when Claude starts messing up, don't we all like tell each other, Claude's having a bad day today? Because the code it's generating is not as good as you thought yesterday, right? And you can visibly feel it. But dude, honestly, a for each versus a for loop never killed anyone in real life. So like, that's not the type of stakes that people are talking about. If you want AI to be in our like community, like outside of tech, then you're going to have to like have use cases that are like that. And then those require more stakes. You know, everything's higher stakes when it comes to people and the law and getting sued and all that shit.
Yes. And Alex is here. Let's bring Alex on. Alex, what's up?
Hey, how's it going, folks? Good to be here.
Yeah, well, you've been on the show before, but maybe you should remind people who you are for those that haven't met you. And you said you were having some mic issues, but clearly not as bad as what we were having. So, you know, I'm glad you got.
I just want to say, I was panicking because I thought my AirPods weren't working, and I was so confused. But it turns out it was your microphone not working after all.
Yeah, we were scrambling to get the new room set up, and
I like it.
Clearly missed some things. It's a start. We got more to do, but it's a start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. My name's Alex. Maybe if you are here on the Mastra YouTube channel, you might recognize me from some of the videos I've been making. my vibe is all about developer experience at Mastra. I want to make sure you have the best experience building an AI agent. And that usually means in the form of education, right? Whether that's videos, workshops, improving documentation, demos. And do you know what, guys? I have some experience on YouTube, but I'm foraying into giving my first conference talk in a few days. And when someone reached out to me a few months ago of the opportunity, I was like, that's loads of time to prepare for a talk. But as the days have got closer, I've realized there's a lot of work to do. I was just working late on it now. I thought maybe I could show you some notes and we can talk a little bit about evals and scorers.
Your first one ever?
I gave a meetup talk many years ago before the pandemic, but I've never been to like an actual conference. And this one is called API Days, by the way, which is quite a big deal in Paris. Looking forward to meet some folks in person and talk agents.
Dude, that's dope. Congrats.
Well, don't congratulate me yet. Let's see how the talk goes.
It'll be fine, man. All right, give it to us.
Yeah. I mean, so I've definitely been in a situation where you think you have plenty of time to prepare a talk, and then all of a sudden you realize you have not. You have wasted all that time, or you've procrastinated. So
what's that thing you say, Shane? It's something like fits to the date or something?
Every project compresses to the timeline or something like that. It's like no matter what, you're gonna like.
Yeah, work expands to fill all available time, right?
Exactly. So the other thing is, even if you started it early, you would be in this mad rush to think if it's good enough. So you might, you gave yourself now you have a deadline and you'll get it done. And we're here to help.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I think you gave a really good intro to evals. I'm going to share my screen here real quick, and maybe Shane, you can help me bring it up.
Yeah, and while you're pulling that up, let's go ahead.
Oh, yeah, let's take this down real quick.
Yeah, I see your full screen. So question from Sebastian, are evals more comparable to regression testing or to test-driven development style testing? I had a feeling it's more about preventing what you saw go wrong during development. And I think there's, I'll answer and then feel free for either of you to jump in. I think it's a little bit of both in some ways, because you typically have some kind of data set that you will run anytime you're making major changes. So you are basically kind of doing some like test-driven development. You want to make sure that the tests are passing before you merge, right? So that is one part of it. That's kind of like what often people will say. They'll call them like your CI evals or your offline evals is what some providers use them as.
Oh.
But it's essentially it's an eval that is not running on live user data that's coming in. It's running on some data set that you've prepared that you want to make sure that doesn't go backwards. But on the other hand, you also have this idea of live evals, or things as users are using the agent live, you're going to either run evals on a sample or all those, depending on what your traffic is and costs and all that stuff. And you're going to then pick out interesting failure modes that you may then want to incorporate into the data set. Or maybe some are bad enough where you're like, okay, we actually got to fix it. So it's almost a combination of these kind of live and then offline evals is, I think, the common phrases that people use. The nice thing is we have Laurie from Arize coming later. So any questions that if you want to know specifics about terminology, Laurie will be the expert, and we'll learn a lot more then. But Alex, do you want to pull it up?
Yeah, maybe I can stick around and learn from Laurie because I've got some questions, that's for sure. Yeah, this talk's an interesting one because when I joined Mastra, I had never really used...
Zoom a little?
Yeah, for sure. It's quite interesting because when I joined Mastra, I'd never built an agent before. And I looked at this list of documentation thinking, wow, I've got so much to learn. And gradually, as I learn about these features, I've been making YouTube videos about them and sort of teaching what I learn in public. The one area that I hadn't really gone in depth on that I'm super stoked to learn more about is evals and scorers. I think you touched on it when you mentioned that sometimes we only think about these towards the end of our projects, or at least when we're in production. While I'm learning, I've not been doing that so much. So I thought this conference talk would be a good forcing function to learn more about evals. Honestly, it's turned out to be a bit harder than I anticipated because there's just so many opinions about evals and definitions, and the sentiment in the community seems to vary. I want to talk a little bit about that. as we go on. But let me just start with a quick definition and a quick understanding of the challenges, just building a little bit on what Abby said. I think we all feel this, right? That our models work all of the time, some of the time. And that's that non-determinism at play that's so powerful, but can also reduce our confidence when we go into production. And so you end up in this sort of scenario where your agent can work 95% of the time, 100% of the time. The reason I phrase it this way is because you might be sort of playing with the agent locally, doing some testing, and things kind of work. But it's when you put it into production and you start getting hundreds, maybe thousands of different inputs that you get these kind of reports of errors. And if we're talking about deterministic software, that's bad enough. But when we're talking about non-deterministic agents, that can be very stressful, very difficult to track down and improve. And this could be huge for your application. If it's in a regulated environment, sure. But I would argue anything that is customer facing, these type of tasks essentially are very important. Going back to the kind of idea of the sentiment, it's sort of, I mean, you might have seen tweets like this where I think I had it pulled up, but I closed it. I think it was Swix who tweeted about how Claude Code aren't using Evals. Some other big companies aren't using Evals. But I think with those products, oftentimes we're like the domain expert in the driver's seat. And so we're not as sensitive to when they go wrong. And they will be looking at proxy metrics, like if we're accepting changes and things like that. But say you're building some kind of customer support agent, you really want to feel good that everything works and will continue to work. If you want to change the agent, you want to do that with confidence. You might want to consider how the agent will behave with real user inputs you haven't seen yet. Guardrails can be essential, right? But only if they work. And you also want to get this idea of like how the system performs in production. Like if there is some degradation due to a regression, or maybe it could be a change of your model provider, or maybe your tool coming from an MCP server changes, you want some kind of overview to make sure this is going in the right direction. And so the challenge is that we need to systematically measure the quality of our AI systems and diagnose those failures. And the more specific we can be about why they're failing, the better chance we have of addressing that, right? And so the solution to these challenges is application evaluations. And I took a little mental note here to not be confused, because I feel like evals can mean different things depending on what you're talking about. When the providers release a new model, they come with evals, right, based on these benchmarks. But these are quite different from application or task-based evals, right?
Yeah, 100%. The types of things that the models are being evaluated on are completely different than your application with a business use case. It's also, benchmarks are very academic in some ways too, like how good is a model at doing mathematics or history, etc. But you're, as an application developer, you're testing how good your agent is at solving the business need that you built, you know? So it's a little different scope.
And your specific business need, right? These models are very general, but when we're building an agent, it's to solve a specific problem, and that's potentially something that's never been seen before, certainly with your unique sets of circumstances and context. And so an eval, I think you can make this, I've kind of learned that you can make this as simple or as complex as you want. And I think that might be, and I'm very curious to hear your take about the sentiment towards evals, but I think that might be where some of the perspective comes in, because an eval fundamentally is a single metric that scores a specific aspect of performance. For example, does it work? Is it good quality? Does it follow the rules in the system prompt? Does it follow the tone? This is an interesting example because that could be quite subjective, which will require a clear definition. And it's also something that you probably can't strictly evaluate using deterministic code. This is where we get into that interesting territory of using a model to evaluate a model's output. We'll get into that. But I highlight scorers here to make it clear that if you ever see scorers used in the context of evals, I would say scorers is like a tactic that falls within evals to assess a specific aspect of performance. And in the simplest form, you can run your agent and you can give it a score. You can say this is good or this is bad. And you can do that as a manual type of thing. And I'm sure you do during development. But as you can appreciate, with a huge variety of inputs and a more complex agent, that isn't going to scale very well. So we start to look for a more systematic approach. Broadly, there are two ways of scoring an LLM's output. The first is deterministic, which is basically where you write code to test the output of the model. This is fine for things like length, formatting, checking for string occurrence. You might as well do this because it doesn't require a model, therefore it's fast and even cheaper. It doesn't have to be cheap to run expensive to run evals, by the way. But if it's not broke, don't fix it. You can use deterministic code in some cases. And these are basically unit tests. You'll probably use like a different test harness and you'll be thinking about it in a different way. But these are a good mental model is to compare these with unit tests. As I mentioned, some things like tone, you're going to really, I don't know how to write code to check the tone, but I do know how to ask an LLM. And so you can use an LLM to create a scorer that will test things like quality based on a criteria, empathy, style, tone, whether it follows the rules, if it does the correct thing, all those type of things. And so the other interesting thing about evals is that they can be operationalized in different ways. You can run scorers on some or all live users. This is a tactical sampling where you can determine like whether you want to run 100% of users, 50% of users, and you can connect this to some dashboards in interesting ways using observability platforms to get that kind of overview of things in production. I only learned this recently, but you can run scorers on like the entire conversation. You can run it on a trace, you can run it on a span, you can run it on a tool called output effectively, right? And it's just a way of having more granularity to see what works. But again, with a lot of granularity options comes a bit of this kind of analysis paralysis thing. And as I work on this presentation, something I'm trying to figure out, by the way, guys, is like, what is the right sort of, what is the 80-20 rule for evals, right? I feel like you can take this so far. I feel like you can write evals for every aspect of your application and you can get very specific, or you can go very broad and just test everything. You can run it on your conversations. You can run it on your traces. You can also, by the way, run scorers on curated data sets. Like Abby was saying, with each config change, this is a bit like what you're used to seeing in CI pipelines with tests, right? But if you change the prompt, you might want to run your evals against the golden data set to make sure that the happy path and the typical edge cases are working. But yeah, I really want to get some more clarity on this because these are the tactical aspects, right? These are quite easy to understand, I think. But the question is how to find the right balance when running evals. Like, what's a good mental model so that you don't just waste a bunch of time writing evals that aren't helpful, but just focus on the 20% that get you 80% of the way there?
Yeah, this is a good question. So we also have a question in the chat that is not the same, but I think it's somewhat related. So Jefferson says, would be nice to be able to check if tools were called with specific values.
You can.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most common evals, right? If you give an agent a bunch of tools, you want to know if this prompt came in, it should call this tool with these values, right? That is one of the most common failure modes, is that the right tool didn't get called in the right situation. And so that is one of the most common set of evals that you want. But the reason that's important is it ties to what is your agent trying to do? What's the business value your agent's trying to solve? And you should focus on what are the 1 to 2 to 3 things that you need this agent to really do well. And that's your 20%, right? And depending on the complexity of the agent, it might be more than 2 or 3 things. But in most cases, most of us are starting when you build agents, you kind of pick a small set of tasks that you want it to do really well. You should look at the end-to-end result of, did it accomplish that? And then you should, when you score it, there's a lot of contradictory, I guess, evidence of how you should set this stuff up. And maybe you should do like a gradient scale of or a linear scale of 0 to 1. And it could be a 0.5. Is it like an okay score? But that's kind of confusing. Like, what is it? If you're just getting started, I'd recommend doing a pass or fail. It either is good enough or it's not good enough. And that is it. Because a human, if you're thinking about it, if I give you a bunch of code, is it good enough to ship or is it not good enough? That's it. That's what matters. Yeah. It's not like, oh, it was pretty good, but no, in that case, it wasn't good enough. So those are, I guess, that'd be my 80-20 is like focus on just like pass or fails and focus on evals that are towards a very specific, whatever you want the business result to be.
That definitely tracks. I've seen in a few different articles and conference talks at AI Engineer, for example, people realizing they overcomplicated it with those scales and just sticking to like a true fail or pass. That seems to get you pretty far. What do you think?
Categorical labels like good, fair. I mean, those are all can be transformed into numbers on a human scale, right? An LLM can assign labels to things, and then you can then give labels meaning. So, for example, if I had like excellent, good, poor, terrible, let's just say, right? But for me, excellent means 5 points, and good is only 3 points, and there you go. And you can make your own numbers, right?
Yeah.
That's it comes back to you can skin this however you like. But I'd like to answer your question in an actual example.
Please.
For example, like let's say I have an agent that helps me order my essentially take my symptoms, like if I'm sick, and then recommend me medication that I can go buy at the pharmacy, or I have to get a prescription, right? We can get all into that too. So if I built that application, I put it in production, I have to cover my ass because I'm not trying to get sued or anything for doing the wrong thing. If I say I have a headache and it gives me Pepto-Bismol, that's not good, right? Like it has to be relevant. And that agent doesn't know what's on my inventory, right? In my pharmacy. So it must have tools to then go access that information. I'm already setting up the stage of how you would cover your ass in the situation. 1, tool call accuracy. When the agent is finding things in inventory based on what the user has prompted, did it call it with the right values and did I get the right result? And if you have many tools that are imperative to the success of the application, you go do tool call accuracy on all of them, right? Second, relevancy of the user input. If I'm asking about a headache and I'm getting diarrhea medication, that's not good, right? So we need to write evals for making sure relevant responses. And then lastly, you don't want to damage or hurt the user. So if they're asking about giving me Oxycontin or cocaine or something, you need to have guardrails to be like, no, we don't sell that here. Mm-hmm. Other than actually, what if it's like goes on Silk Road and actually tries to buy it for the customer, right? Like we don't want that to happen. So you need to put guardrails in place. Hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think some of those examples are no-brainers, right? Like we do not want to be ordering cocaine off Silk Road if somebody ordered. I think it gets interesting is like agents they often behave like close enough. Like it's fair. I think it'd be unlikely if you ask about a headache and get diarrhea medicine, just because the model is probably going to go on roughly the right track. But it's more about those kind of edge cases that it's more likely to fail if, for example, someone they phrase it in a very specific way, for example. And I think I struggle to identify when is a good time to worry about those edge cases and when to just focus on the big picture obvious problems relating to the Silk Road, etc.
Yeah, so that's why we always recommend tracing everything from the beginning. So even if you're not doing evals, you're collecting traces for all the things coming into your system. And then you yourself manually over time should be able to discover edge cases in that data because users are non-deterministic too. So you have a bunch of inputs that would probably lead you to believe that there's edge cases or something, and then you can then form stuff around that. This is one of those things, dude, Alex, it's always tough with this subject because of non-determinism. Yeah. You're really trying to do the scientific method. And how was science created? There was no rules, right? You had to keep testing, experimentation, and then eventually you have a hypothesis, analysis, and then you can back up what you say. Same thing with evals.
I like that. I think this is such a good point, right? That tracing is essential. And while you might not be completely sure about how to run evals in your project, it's a very good idea to turn on tracing earlier than later because you're building up a data set essentially that you can then analyze to identify failure modes and then perhaps refine your evals over time. So we're not going to go too much into the details. We're running a little bit short on time, but it's kind of interesting to me because, and by the way, this is just something I need to learn more about and I'm excited to get into. I'm really curious to look more into platforms like Arize, by the way, because I think they can help with this. I feel very good about this idea of running scorers on a curated data set because I can liken it to CI and TD and tests and things like that. And they're different from tests in the sense that usually tests are about deterministic type stuff, and there's no such concept as LLM as a judge. It makes sense that we have different nomenclature for this very different category. But then there's this idea of having the sort of eval loop where you are always using traces to like running scorers against traces continuously in production and using that to gain insights, which you then go on to improve. And you sort of repeat this cycle until the metrics where you want to be, or if they drop where they are. And I think this gets, and I just want to call out that I think this is really hard for someone new to agents to wrap their head around unless they're truly thinking about a production use case, because it's a lot easier to learn this, I think, when you have a hook to hang on, if you can think about what you're building and how to do it. And so this is something I want to learn a bit more about. And we get into all kinds. I don't think we have time to get into all of it today, but we get into these really interesting ideas like LLM as a judge. And then when you're using a model to test a model, well, you could kind of say, well, that model needs its own tests, right? And that's sort of where this idea of ground truth comes into play. We also think about ideas like having a golden data set. You know, we talk about the 80-20 rule. This is a good way of starting, I think. And I have seen these like videos, obviously, in talks where people talk a lot about data sets and they talk about error analysis. Like error analysis sounds a bit complicated, but it's basically just looking at how and when the model fails and ideally forming those into some kind of categories, because if you can create a category, you solve that category and you have this downstream effect of solving a bunch of issues. Like it makes total sense, right? And you might also want to look at a tactic called synthetic data, which is where you use an LLM to generate data instead of collecting it from real users. Suppose you're building a very specialized agent, something to do with like contracts, for example. You have very few but very high value customers. You might not gather enough significant data to run evals at scale in a meaningful way, but then you could generate some synthetic data. I do want to learn more about these because they are like, it kind of, there's this kind of distinction, right? We have this idea of running scorers like in development and as part of like a CI pipeline, but there's continuous monitoring and evaluation. That's something I'm still trying to wrap my head around a little bit. I wondered if you guys have a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah, so what I always say is, if you've run a production application before, it's actually not as different as you would think. There are definitely different nomenclature, different way to think about it because of the non-determinism. But if you think about your golden data set that runs against CI, you've probably had software tests that run on CI, so that's not that different. And you kind of mentioned. But the other aspect is, if you've ever run a production application, you probably have some kind of monitoring, right? Like, is the latency on my API behind like what it should be? Do I need to investigate that? It's so you almost look at it from like a DevOps or a monitoring perspective, and that's what those live evals really are. It's another input, and yes, it is a little bit harder, but sometimes if you're in DevOps, like sometimes tracking down production issues is actually, it's not as deterministic as you'd want it to be. It's actually pretty hard. So
whack too.
So I mean, it is kind of like that in a way that, and of course it's even maybe harder in this case because of the level of non-determinism, but it is very much a monitoring exercise, and it maybe a different persona. It's not the DevOps person doing the monitoring. Maybe it's the human expert. If it's, if it's in Abhi's case earlier, like a medical pharmacist, well, you maybe need some doctors that are actually validating that. It's not the DevOps person, but it is kind of that monitoring approach of like, we are monitoring the application, and then we are going to do things to try to make it better if we see failure points. And so I think that's the way to think about it. Doesn't make it any easier to do, but I think it's like, that's how I think about it, and it makes sense to me that way.
That sounds good. I like that. Just one last question for you then. And I'm so stoked to see the rest of the show with Laurie from Arize and the folks from Defang as well. I'm glad we got a chance to set the stage a little bit with some basic definitions around evals and scorers and things. There seems to be a bit of like mixed sentiment in the industry. Some people like sing evals praises. Other people are a bit more cynical. I feel like maybe there's a trend of people looking for the minimum simple way to use evals and get value from them. Like we were talking about, right? Like keeping it simple with a pass or a fail, maybe running a limited number of evals. Like what's your sort of take? Do you think that evals are like overhyped and not as helpful as maybe some people would want you to believe? Or do you think that they have like a very useful place for most agents? And how do you kind of reckon between those two sides of the conversation?
I have controversial take to this as always.
All right, do it.
I think that there's a big conspiracy out here, okay? Now, like social media and the whole AI like industry has been up and down on evals. When we first started Mastra, evals were such a big thing that it was one of the first things we built outside of like what we had, right? So we added the old version of evals back then when we didn't know anything. Then we come to find out that users are not even close to production to even care about evals. And so there was a whole moment where no one cared about evals. Then some big companies started publishing their evals. So now people, not big companies, just startups publishing their evals. So now people care about evals again. Then a lot of companies exist, like, you know, the big eval companies exist. They're pushing for people to do evals because they need to make money. Like that's their product. And then the coding agent companies start saying that they're anti-eval and they don't do them at all. So then that confuses people because, you know, we're all engineers and we're trying to like do the right thing. We're trying to like look for guidance. I bet you if Airbnb published an eval set, taught people how they did it and how it impacted the conversion of Airbnb customers, everyone would be doing evals tomorrow. So this is all like a thing of like, who are the people listening to, a thought leadering about it. But yeah, that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I would say it depends. If you're in a highly regulated, industry,
we've got the hot take, and then we've got the
you know, if you're building a coding agent, just ship the thing. All right, just make sure it passes the vibes and get it out there. And then if a lot of people are using it, and you do what, you know, Cursor and Windsurf notoriously did, where you feel like one day it's working great, and the other day it sucks for you. If you were using it at that point, you realize like maybe you wish they would have had some evals, maybe would have caught some of their regressions. And so I think it does depend. I think the higher the regulatory burden, the higher the chance you're going to need evals earlier in the process.
Every customer that we've talked to that has to do compliance is for like eval forward, let's say pro eval. Anyone who's a startup who is vibe based, they're anti-eval. It slows them down, quote unquote, slows them down. So it's just interesting.
Yeah,
it's kind of interesting looking at it as it's about the risk level. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'd say if you can get it out and get your thing in front of users quicker, and then you're going to get your data set, and then you can build your evals later. If that scares you, then you probably need evals because you probably have a reason where if your agent messes up, you're on the hook for something. So.
Well, that feels like a neat little bow to put on this thing, because I started by saying about how it works all the time, some of the time, right? And I think for a startup where what you care about is putting something in front of users for them to react to, you're inching towards product market fit, then, you know, it's okay to have some rough edges, right? That's not going to be deal breaking. But for some applications, especially if it's to do with like a formal process or compliance or something, if it doesn't work, it will not be successful. There's no doubt about it. So it sounds to me then it's like a balance between risk and speed, and this and that's not a new consideration for most startups anyway. I think Lovable just deferred an enormous VAT bill because they wanted to move fast. You know, it's just a thing, right? In startups, like it's how we roll. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I hope I could set the stage for y'all.
Dude, your talk is going to be great. The content is amazing. It's going to be very thought provoking. Good job.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Oh, hopefully it's recorded.
Yeah, hopefully it's recorded. I want to watch it.
All right. See you, Alex.
Sebastian said, eval is a loaded term in the JavaScript world. Indeed, it is. But as we know, AI was not created by JavaScript developers.
We have learned. All right. We are behind schedule today, so we're going to go through the news. We might go through the news a little faster than normal. And if we don't get through it all, we'll come back and finish whatever we didn't get to. Because we have Laurie, who should be coming on here in a bit. So let's talk some news. Anthropic's been in the news a lot. So first up is that Anthropic, Simon Wilson had a blog that said Opus has a soul document, which when I read that, I was like, what is a soul document? What does that even mean? But so apparently the thought was it was actually, rather than just being added to the system prompt, it was part of the training data to try to give Opus a soul, you know, like more of like to be more basically guide how it makes its decisions. And so there are some things in this that if you scroll down, it kind of talks through like your Claude, you're trained by Anthropic. Our mission is, you know, here's our mission. We're in a peculiar position. We believe it might be building one of the most transformative and potentially dangerous technology in history, yet we press forward anyways. So this isn't cognitive dissonance, but rather a calculated bet. And so it's basically trying to instill this sense of like obligation to do the right thing, I think, through this document that was part of the training data. And talks about, you know, trying to prevent prompt injection. And it's just an interesting idea. Like, of course, we've probably thought that kind of system prompt, but now they're trying to like bake in certain preferences and like how they want the soul or the LLM to think into the training itself, not just in the system prompt, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Super legit.
So there's also some rumors. I don't know if it's been officially confirmed. I haven't really kept up to date over the weekend, but rumors are that Anthropic is going to go public. So that's potentially coming. And they're doing some behavior that would maybe indicate they're planning to do that. So for those of you in the JavaScript world, you probably saw that Anthropic, in a surprise move, purchased or acquired Bun.
Huge.
So yeah, that was definitely caught my attention as someone who's obviously used Bun a little bit, but I'll share it here. And yeah, so Anthropic acquired Bun. You know, they were partners with Jared on the Bun team, and you know, I think as much as they probably wanted the technology, I think they maybe wanted the team even more, because it seems like they Anthropic wants to own the coding market, right? And being close with developer people, great engineers building developer tools is one way to appeal to that market. What do you think?
The Bun team is super talented. I don't know what happens to Bun per se, because they are trying to focus on Claude Code, as Bun had an announcement blog post as well you can read on their website. But yeah, they take really good talent. Also, if you think about it, Anthropic has a runtime now, and that's interesting. So I would bet that they're going to keep doubling down on making Claude Code the best for engineers, and then maybe some other new stuff that allows them to pack and ship JavaScript or write code better for these cases.
Which ties into this, you know, report that is from The Information. And again, like, don't know how to validate if this is true or not, but Anthropic has apparently told investment banks, most likely as part of this IPO plans, that it plans more acquisitions to strengthen its coding capabilities. Coding-related tasks now make up the majority of its revenue.
Also, look at that article right below. Open Router showing Anthropic dominance. That's tight.
And there's actually, I'll pull this up. This is another post. This is a tweet from Swix that says, this one chart explains everything about why OpenAI, XAI, and DeepMind dropped everything to go after the chase in grand prize and coding use cases. So you can see that basically, if you look at programming, it looks at it as it's like the highest value. You have like amount of tokens, the cost per token, and it's kind of a sweet spot of, and this is from Open Router, right?
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about a little bit later as well, but it's kind of that sweet spot of, it just makes sense that, and they've of course been on the sidelines seeing Anthropic winning and pulling in so much revenue that I think it has made all the other model labs really take notice.
Dude, coding agents are a pyramid scheme if you think about it, right? Like, because we are the ones using it the most, paying the most, and you know, and that's where all the model companies want to go. Like even with OpenAI's Code Red, I wonder, are they going to try to improve coding performance or try to focus on ChatGPT, the thing that they could win?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, OpenAI, you know, kind of announced they have a Code Red where they're trying to focus on the product, but their product, they're winning in consumer land. So
Yeah.
maybe they should focus on consumer. Maybe they're going to give up some
Maybe
of the
they
coding,
maybe they
but-
regret the workflow builder now because they're like, oh shit, that was a distraction.
I mean, but I do think that they, their codex model, some people do like, so it's not obviously what Anthropic has, but it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what OpenAI's next moves are. Do they keep doubling down on coding? I would expect they will. I think they want to own. I think they're going to go after two things. Consumer, they're going to try to continue to win in coding. And I think they're going to try to limit some of the other, quote unquote, distractions that are not specific to those missions.
The biggest enterprise use case right now is coding. So that's where the money is, not $20 a month OpenAI subscription is pretty good at volume, but then Anthropic's not doing that. Claude is not the best chat thing, but the API is, right? So I wonder how many Claude Max plans have increased. I have a Claude Max plan now too.
Yeah, I've just been paying the API use tokens, but now I'm starting to think I should
see this is a pyramid scheme.
I should get that Max plan. Anthropic launched Interviewer. It's a tool to really try to help understand people's perspectives on AI. So it's available if you for a week-long pilot. This came out last week, so go check it out. But basically, you give Anthropic Interviewer a research goal, and it drafts research questions, conducts interviews, and analyzes responses in collaboration with a human researcher.
That's cool.
So they said they tested it on 1,250 professionals about their views on work in AI. The largest sample was from general workforce, and it's kind of an interesting approach here.
Do the American people hate AI? Let's see. Oh, it's not in the thing.
Yeah, it's not part of it.
But what the sentiment was from the interviews.
We looked at the intensity of the most common emotions, emotion radar.
Nope.
So basically the goal is for Anthropic to be able to conduct more research on a variety of topics, but interesting thing that was released. Maybe it's interesting for you to check out. So there's another thing that is not Anthropic related, but it's because of Opus that it even came about. And so I'm going to call this as kind of an Anthropic thing. And I don't even know if it's serious, but I think they want it to be serious, but I don't know that it actually is. But we're going to talk about it anyways, because that's what we do here.
I think I chatted with this guy.
Introducing
Alex.
Opus PM, Opus Package Manager. Instead of npm install Lodash, we run Opus PM install Lodash, except it doesn't install anything. It builds the entire package from scratch using your Claude code. Never have supply chain attacks again. And so there you go. It's open source. Obviously, it's a bit of a joke, but it's an interesting idea in that as Opus is better and it can write and manage its own code, do you need less packages? That's maybe what this is, why this is kind of interesting. If they're simple packages, would you just rather build them yourself? Or would you go ahead and still want to use the package that maybe has some vulnerability, as we've been seeing with NPM and other things lately? What do you think?
I don't think that's worth doing, if it's already written, because you're just wasting tokens. But I was talking to someone who had a different perspective. We shouldn't care about tokens. That's the current problem is caring about tokens and IDEs and stuff. Maybe in the future, when we don't have to care about the code, you don't even care what package it is or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel. Right now, we definitely need to care about the code. You can't just be writing Lodash every single time.
Yeah.
Why would you? Not efficient.
Yeah, I think it's in a future state. Maybe there's some of these packages that could go away, right? But I also think once you write the code, you still have to maintain it. And that's on you. Even if you're using tools to help you maintain that code and those tools are better than you could do yourself, that's still a significantly larger code base. And of course, maybe you don't need as much. There's a lot of stuff you could throw away from some packages that you don't actually use, right? You might only use one part of the package. But I do think in general, having to maintain that much extra code is probably not a good thing. Maybe eventually the token cost continues to drop, the speed increases, and we don't even have to ever look at the code again. But I also know that LLMs write some insecure code as well. So you shouldn't just trust the code that was written by the LLM to
Yeah.
replace the package that might also have a security vulnerability. So use
Something
your
relevant
judgment.
to us. Like we have this library that we were using that is now no longer supported on npm, which is a bug now in our code. It's called string similarity. I'm not gonna go look for another string similarity library because I'm Opus pilled. I'm gonna ask Opus to write it, and that's how I'm gonna pick that battle. But if I needed to implement Lodash, I'm not gonna ask Opus to make Lodash. I'm gonna ask it. Well, if I needed like find index from Lodash, for example, I only needed that one function. Maybe I would ask Opus to do it if I didn't know that already existed. And I think that's the power of it.
Yeah. And
I gotta fix that bug, by the way. I just remembered it while talking about this shit.
And yeah, so we're a little behind schedule. So we're going to move on to, we're going to bring Laurie on in just a second here. But we got a question in the chat. And it looks like Meet Ryan Evans says, this is my first time watching this live stream. And it's great to have all this AI, new information, and casual style of talk. Well, we keep it pretty casual around here, you know. But how often do we all go live? Every Monday, usually right around noon Pacific time. Some days like today, we run a little late, but noon Pacific, we're here live almost every week. And if we're not, we'll usually make it up at some other point in the week. But it's a good reminder. If you are just tuning in for the first time, I'm Shane. This is Abby. This is AI Agents Hour. Please go give us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And this is a live show. So please drop in your comments on YouTube, X, LinkedIn, wherever you are watching us from. And with that, I'm excited. So before I bring Laurie on, I want to say, Laurie,
Are we back? Okay, I think we're back. Sorry about that, y'all. I think we had a big power surge or something here. Okay, what were we saying?
all right, are we back?
I think we're back.
We had some, this has been the show of technical difficulties today.
I think it's happening to him again. Uh-oh, it's happening to me.
Are you still on?
No, I was.
All right. Let's see if we're back.
Nope. Let's go on my.
Well, all right. So
We're back.
we are kind of back. This has been the show of technical difficulties, but sorry all for whoever lost us on the stream. We're going to try to do our best to make this thing work. And we might have lost audio quality a little bit, but we are going to do what we do every week here, and we're going to roll with it. So, and we'll figure out what is in this new studio setup that caused the failure. But it seems like the internet just kind of dropped on us here. But I don't know where we cut off, so I'm going to start back over and say that I'm excited to bring Laurie onto the show.
They saved the day.
Laurie saved the day for us at TS AI Conf. We had kind of our MC for the event, got sick, I think had an ear infection or something, was not able. So let us know basically one day before that she did not think she was going to be able to do it. And so Laurie was able to come in on short notice and kind of save the day and really helped us out. So Laurie, hopefully you can hear us. Hopefully we won't lose you again. Good to see you.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
And are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. We figured it out. All right. Maybe for those that don't know you, I think a lot of people maybe do, but for those that don't, you want to give a quick introduction and then tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Sure. My background is as a web developer. I've been a web developer for 30 years now, which is, like longer than a lot of people on this audience have been alive. Along the way, I founded some companies, including NPM Inc. So I was very interested to see Opus PM.
It's a fun tie-in.
And I've worked at Netlify, I've worked at Llama Index, and now I'm working at Arize AI, where I am doing developer relations and teaching everybody about evaluations and observability.
Awesome. And can you tell people a little bit more about Arize in general? I'm sure many people know. We've been talking about evals earlier, so we probably talk a little bit about that. But what is Arize? How long has it been around? And what's the common pain point that people end up going to Arize for?
Sure. So Arize has been around about 7 years. So it started before the LLM boom, when it was doing evaluations for traditional ML. It pivoted strongly when LLMs became a big thing for obvious reasons. And it has two main products. We have AX, which is sort of the enterprise product, full-featured, full-fat. You can do an on-prem install. You can use it as a SaaS. And then there's Phoenix, which is our open-source product, which is a smaller feature set, but you can run it on your laptop and just get started instantly. Which a lot of people like, especially when you're in an enterprise environment and you're like, oh, I don't have time to do a whole purchase order. I just want to do some evals. Just being able to run some evals on your laptop is a big selling point for a lot of people. So in terms of why people would pick us up, what we try to do is close the loop for the entire software lifecycle of an agent. So when you start at the development phase, you can use us to figure out, what is your weirdo agent doing, and just basic observability, like what do my traces do, what prompt is going to the LLM, and what actual response am I getting at, and you can do basic optimization then. But when we really shine is when you move into production, because then you can take real-time traces from your production app, and you can turn them into data sets and run evaluations against them, both to do offline evaluations where you're like, okay, against real-world data, how did we do? Were we actually satisfying the user's requests? Were we doing what we expected to do? But you can also do real-time monitoring. So you can have an LLM constantly running evaluations against responses. So if your agent suddenly goes off the rails and starts, cursing everybody out or giving everybody 100% discounts, you can be alerted to that in real time.
Yeah, and I think that is, we talked a little bit about evals earlier, and that was one of the biggest really things we talked about is you need good mechanisms for setting up that data set or kind of setting that eval loop, right? It's like you have real user data coming in. you want to be able to then pull that back into a data set, and having that like live eval loop is a big part of that. Do you see
one of the most exciting things that we're doing at the moment is we're getting into automated prompt optimization. So you get the results of your evals and you feed them to an LLM and you say, hey, LLM, what would be a better prompt than the prompt we were using when we got these evals? And we tried that using Claude Code. So we got the LLM to write your Claude MD file for you on the basis of a loop of evaluations of like how well Claude Code was doing against a set of PRs on GitHub. And we got something like a 25% lift in how well it was able to tackle PRs by training it on an optimized Claude MD file for your specific repo.
So it's essentially like automated context engineering.
Yes, exactly what that is.
Yeah. For the system prompt specifically, right?
Yeah, for the Claude MD, which is essentially the system prompt for Claude Code.
Yeah, and are you baking this into the Arize product suite to be able to allow people to kind of use that loop where it does some of that? It can help improve the prompts of their agents.
Yes, I mean you can do it today. It's kind of it's semi-manual, but using the SDK, like we did it. The prompt optimization I talked about, we were using the SDK to do it in a tight loop. In code under the hood, so you can do it today.
Nice. Yeah, I think there's, if last year or this current year was all about people starting to think about how to build agents and really getting started, I think the next year is going to be about how do you get these agents to give better quality? And obviously context engineering is a big part of that. We hear a lot about reinforcement learning as well as like a separate approach, but I think that's like the really heavy-handed approach that you probably don't want to go down that path unless you absolutely have to.
Unless you're rich.
Yeah, so it's like, how do you make the prompt better? And obviously, if the LLM can write prompts better than we can, then maybe we should just tie them into the loop and have the LLM help out rather than having to just have a human kind of read through all the results and do it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, there's reinforcement learning and then there's reinforcement learning, right? Like if you're taking real world signals and you're turning them into modifications of your agent, then you are doing reinforcement learning, even if that is not what the people who do RL think of as reinforcement learning.
This is true. Yeah, you're not changing the model weights, but you are changing the agent's how the agent interacts. So
yes, exactly.
We were asked this question earlier, which is like to eval or not to eval, essentially, and like from y'all's perspective at the company, what are the types of customer profiles that really care about evals versus what do you think are customer profiles that don't care about evals?
That's a great question. The analogy that I draw for our product is there was this famous quote from somebody who was, I think it was like the CEO of the Coca-Cola company, who said that like we compete for share of mouth with water. And I'm like, the equivalent for us is we compete for share of evals with vibes, right? We're basically not doing it. A lot of people are just getting away with vibes right now. And when the trigger for us, the trigger we see most often is we built an agent using vibes that we were sure was going to be absolutely great in the development phase. We put it into the real world and people immediately started feeding the script of the B movie into it. And it went immediately off the rails. And we need real world, like we've got all of these traces, we need real world evaluation data right now because our agent does not work anything like we expected it to work against production data. So yeah, I finally got my agent into production is the biggest trigger for doing formal evaluations.
Yeah, I think that resonates pretty well with what we see. A lot of our users is, and sometimes it makes sense. Like you can probably get pretty far for certain use cases with vibes, but I think one of the higher the regulation, the more likely you need evals early. That's one thing that I've seen talking to a lot of our users. Like if there's a high cost to your agent failing, well then you probably should bring evals in before you get to production.
Yeah.
You should block deployment Do you think not having them should block your deployment?
It's a good question. The problem is non-determinism, right? The problem is, are your evals failing because your agent is being like your LLM as a judge for your evals is itself going off the rails, or your eval is not as fine-grained as you want? Like, what is the error rate on, what is the false positive rate on your live evals, really? I think if you're getting like a 50% failure rate, then it's clear that something is horribly wrong. So there is some threshold at which it makes sense to block deployment. But it can't be 100% just because of the non-determinism of like how your evals work in the first place.
Interesting.
And what would you recommend is the way to get started? So someone who's new to evals, they're listening to this and they're thinking, okay, yeah, maybe you convinced me. I've been trying to not do it, but now maybe I should try. At least learn a little bit. Where should they go to learn? And then like, how would you recommend someone get started?
I spend a lot of time thinking about this, as you can imagine, because it's my whole job is to try and persuade people to get started with evals. I think the way that we see most people come in the door to Arize is they get started with Phoenix, and the thing that they get started with for Phoenix is not evals but tracing. So that I think is the front door is. Before you get into formal evaluation, just get a better handle on what your agent is actually doing under the hood that isn't like printing out log lines. Throw some tracing in there and you will be immediately surprised at what's actually going on. There's going to be more loops than you were expecting. There's going to be more latency than you were expecting. There's going to be more weirdness happening than you thought. And just getting good tracing, good observability going is going to get you a lot of the way. And then throw it into production, because the best way to do evals is with production data. Like you can use synthetic data, you can imagine what your input is going to be like, but nothing is like production in terms of confounding your expectations. So throw it into production, get some traces out of it, and then start evaluating that. Assuming you are a startup, obviously. If you're a bank, don't do that. If you're a bank, for the love of God, like generate some synthetic data and come up with a golden data set, please, before you start sending everybody's money to China. But if you're at the early development stage, there's nothing like production data to see what it's really going to work like.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just can't predict what people are going to try to do with it. You can try to generate your own data set, and maybe it's useful to start with at least a small sample. But yes, no one, if you've ever built products for any human, you know that people don't typically follow the happy path all the time.
Yeah, so, to say nothing of like adversarial stuff, right? People coming in and like deliberately trying to get your bot to do their homework for them instead of answer whatever question it was, right? They're like, yeah, actually, I don't want to do shopping. I need you to generate, this script in Python, please. The LLM will do that. Yeah. So, testing your guardrails and things like that, it doesn't really happen until you hit production.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, I built a Slack agent that lives in our Slack just to play a game with the whole Mastra team, and immediately someone asked it to write code for them. And so it was like the first,
make me a node server.
It was like, make me a node server. And so what you said is exactly true. Like, of course, the adversarial stuff as well.
Yeah, people have been doing that with whatever Amazon's shopping bot is called. They immediately started asking it to generate stuff for them in Python because they were like, free tokens.
Yeah,
it's still happening too. Like, I think newcomers, they'll get to production and they look at the traces and then they realize that they need guardrails. It comes to that point where they see a user input that they never thought that they would see. And it triggers their like, oh, I gotta do something about this. But maybe people should do that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said for the quality of synthetic data sets that you can get now is pretty good. The LLMs are surprisingly good at generating, even if you ask them, like, come up with an adversarial data set, come up with something where you're trying to break this bot. They're pretty good at that these days. So it's not wasted time, but the quality of real production data is just can't be beat.
I'd like to ask you something that is not LLM related at all, or AI related.
Sure.
Can we go through like memory lane and talk about like the state of web stuff from back in the day?
Sure.
You got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. I just wanted to know.
This is my favorite topic. So.
Is it really?
Oh yeah, I love talking about the web.
Yeah. So we talked about all the eval stuff. Now let's talk about we're all web developers. A lot of our audience is similar backgrounds to us, coming from the web world. That's why we're doing JavaScript AI stuff.
So if the audience doesn't know, Laurie used to do the state of web reports every year, and it would like predict and have some predictions and what happened in the year. And it was super valuable because you got to see who were like the rising players in libraries and everything. Actually, Laurie, you should explain like the work that kind of went into that, because I don't think people appreciate it enough.
I mean, it was a side effect of working at NPM was that I was just sitting on all of this data about what packages were going up and what packages were going down. And in particular, the thing that I was trying to fix was people who would look at a specific package and say, oh, my downloads went up, so everybody's using this package. And I'm like, actually, every single package on the registry is constantly going up because the registry just gets bigger all the time. And what you need to look at is how much faster than the registry your package is growing. I called that metric the share of registry. And it was much more interesting. It's like relative to the registry, this package is actually going down. Even though it has more users than it's ever had before, it's getting less popular.
But that look at it is how a lot of open source calculates success now, which is like the velocity of downloads within the registry against other libraries of the same type, let's say.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like it's like honestly, we use those calculations today, and I'm sure everyone does. So it's awesome. Would you ever do this for the AI industry? The same kind of report?
If I could get anything like the same quality of data, I would do it in a heartbeat. One of the problems with AI is that we are not nearly as centralized in terms of a data source, right? Like, who would you ask? Who would you ask that question? Would you ask OpenAI? Would you ask like OpenRouter? Yeah. OpenRouter have tried to do some stuff like that in terms of like share of models, which is very interesting stuff. But like they have a lot of selection bias in terms of who decides to use OpenRouter. But yeah, I would do it in a heartbeat. I love data.
How do we get you this data? Can we get a call, call for proposal on getting us the data? Ideally, where would you want it from?
The very best data comes from humans. The very best data is like you don't try and infer it from downloads. You actually send 30,000 people a survey and are like, tell me what the hell you're up to. Tell me why you're doing this, because why is a question that the data can never answer, whereas the humans always know why. So I would love to see like a community effort of all of the various frameworks coming together and saying, we're all going to pool our communities, we're all going to pool our questions, and we're going to try and come up with, to the extent that it is possible, like an impartial look at the entire survey, the entire landscape. I would love to do something like that.
We're in.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll start to rally the different crowds. I mean, I do think as a it is risky as a company to be part of something like that, because you don't want what you're building to have a negative light, but also like people want to make educated choices, and we're all kind of like, we learn from each other. So it's useful to see what are people doing and how are they using these things, and not just listening to some random people if you're just tuning in for the first time on a live stream.
But it's the data is so true because it telegraphed the fall of Gatsby. Like that was like, honestly, it did. Like, let's be honest. Like that the data showed the fall of Gatsby. You could just see it, and you're like, that's interesting as hell. And then the rise of Next.js, like that was so critical. And I bet it was the same here.
yeah, it was not fun to be in the position to be pointing that out. Like, especially the Gatsby community was kind of good natured about it. They were like, "Oh, that's a shame," but like the Angular community were like big mad. The Angular community did not like being told that their share of registry was falling. I got some very angry emails about it.
Yeah, they can't blame you. They gotta blame the survey. I mean,
It
everyone.
turns out they can blame me. It turns out they can, and they did.
They're going to try. Laurie, any parting words before we let you go? We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time, and thanks again for the invitation. Anytime you want me back.
Yeah, and what's the best way for people to follow you?
I am Selda.com on Blue Sky, and that is where I answer everything fastest.
All right, Selda.com on Blue Sky, and check out Arize. I'm really excited. I've been playing around with Phoenix a little bit as well. So if you're looking for like open source observability that plays well with Mastra, give that a shot.
And check out those old reports.
Yeah,
go through memory lane.
State of web.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, we'll see you, Laurie.
See ya.
All right. Well, it's been a show. We've had our share of technical difficulties, which happens from time to time. We do say we're not experts at this. We got day jobs. This is what we do for fun.
We barely do that. So,
but I'm excited about bringing on Lio and Kevin. So I chatted with them a while back. They use Mastra a little bit, but they also have some really cool integrations with Mastra and other frameworks, and they really have some cool tools for deployment. And so I want to bring on and learn a little bit about Defang. So let's bring them on the show. Kevin and Lio, welcome.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Sounds all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. Yep, we can hear you. We are back. We've had some, as you maybe have seen, as you've been kind of seeing the show. Normally we don't have this many technical difficulties, but today we're in a new place, and it's been a battle. But we're still here, and we're having a good time. But maybe as a good way to intro, can you tell me, Lio, what is Defang, and then maybe you guys can both do a quick little introduction, and then I hear we're going to see a demo at some point too, so we always like to see demos.
Yeah, we prepared a demo for everybody to see, so enough opportunities for more technical difficulties later.
Live demos.
Yeah, so I'm co-founder of Defang, and it really started, and the name kind of hints at it, at a way to be able to build applications that are not tied into any particular cloud. That's where the Fang came from. It has changed a little bit, but in essence now it's a deployment tool that helps you deploy your application to, well, any cloud, but we're not there yet. So we support AWS, GCP, and DigitalOcean now. And in a way that is cloud agnostic, right? So build your application once, but deploy it multiple times. What's interesting, and this is where the Mastra agent angle comes in. What's interesting is where people are using Defang to deploy their own applications to the cloud, in particular AWS, GCP. But now we're seeing them deploy their applications into their customers' cloud. So that's kind of an angle that we that took on, because, as you know, many people are hosting their stuff in production. It's been clicked for the last 2 years by some DevOps guy who understands exactly what's going on. And then when a customer comes and says, "I love your agent, love your app, but can you deploy one for me in my account so that I can monitor what goes in, what goes out?" Yeah, then they're scrambling because they never set up all the automation for that. And that's kind of where we want to come in.
It's super cool because I was on a podcast last week or something, and I think it's coming out. Someone asked me, like, what's the tool that's like non-AI related that you really want to see? And I was like, multi-cloud deployment. So that's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So, I was supposed to do my introduction. Yeah, so I've been in the space for a while. Defang is my third startup. And kind of because of the pain that I've had in previous startups, you build your application and then you keep rewriting the whole thing 3 times over because of the cloud is changing or the cost profile is changing. And yeah, so Kevin, you want to introduce yourself then?
Yeah, I definitely don't have that much experience like everyone. I graduated like 3 years ago. So, but I did do 6 internships. So, yeah, I have a typical Google internship, and then a little bit of Tesla here and there, Apple, and then after I realized I hated working at big companies, so here I am at a small 10-person company. So, yeah, and I don't know. Around here, I just kind of solve things, I guess. If I have a title, I'm a developer, but if they want me to, marketing, the works. So, yeah, just kind of taking around things here.
Cool, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on. And obviously, we talked a while back, and you showed me some stuff, and we talked about, some of the support you're adding for Mastra and all that. But are we ready to see a demo? Can we see a demo soon?
Yeah, we got.
Seeing is believing. I think everyone wants to see something, and so
Yeah.
And if you are watching this as we're pulling up this demo, if you have questions,
Put them in the chat.
drop them in the chat. We will try to answer as many of them as we can.
All right, can everyone see my screen? Or
Yes.
yeah,
Maybe click a zoom.
Oh, is it that bad?
Well, I think it's just old people,
better?
well, like us, like me.
Is this any better? One more click or
One more click.
Okay.
Got it. There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like 1 or 2 clicks past where you're comfortable as the driver. You're like, this is way too big, but that's probably for the viewers.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, we our IAC, or like a lot of people use Terraform and stuff like that. We use a compose file. So our compose file kind of defines what your project or definition is, and I think the compose file is actually a really good way because most people that we talk to for local development, they all use compose files because who wants to spin up like a database by hand and all that stuff when you can have a compose file that just spins up your whole stack and then just kind of joins everything together. So we decided on this, and all you need is a Docker file within your application, or if you don't have one, I have tried it before without a Docker file too. We use Railpack, and it containerize your application for you as well. So some people that aren't really familiar with it, Docker and Docker files. So yeah, today we Abby helped me with this repository. I think it was the repo base. I was trying to make it work and make it as a sample for our customers to see how to use Mastra with Defang. And special thing is a lot of people I saw online on Mastra was also turning on SSL. So we have SSL support, and we make everything very production ready. Let me go through the compose file. So a lot of times we have to deal with keys to Bedrock or Vertex AI. With Defang, we have this special compose extension called XDefang LLM. And if you toggle this true, what we do is we make a task role or a service account enabled in your GCP or AWS account to enable Vertex AI or Bedrock for wherever cloud you're going to. So that way you don't have to pass a key. It's ready for you. Your application can use it. Only for GCP, we need these two because the Vercel routing needs these two kind of information, your GCP project and your location. AWS doesn't need it. AWS can just look at the service role and then be able to invoke it from there. But yeah, and then we have a Postgres database down here. And usually when we have this XDefang Postgres, this is our thing. And this tells us to use a managed database. So RDS and Cloud SQL. So we're not running like containerized Postgres containers. You can have a full managed database in your cloud. All right, so I'm just gonna hit these two. This is how we would typically send to the cloud. I'm actually gonna send them both at the same time. So the left is gonna be sending to AWS, the right is gonna send to GCP. Yeah, and I set everything up already just for time-wise. If not, you would just need to set some environment variables like or configurations through our tool, like LLM, what LLM you want, and maybe a GitHub token for rate limiting purposes, but it's optional just for this app. So here.
Hey, Kevin, while the deployment is running there, you want to ask the MCP server? Kevin wrote our MCP server as well. Do you want to ask the MCP server about comparing costs?
Yeah, I was just going to do that next. Yeah, for sure. We will do that. So we made a MCP server that calls our backend and calls actually the Amazon or GCP for estimations of how much these will cost. And we have 3 modes available: well balanced, and I think, was it production, or was it what's up there?
High availability, but
high
production is a alias. You can use either.
Yeah. So how much will this cost me on AWS? That's right now.
Yeah, so let me explain a little bit what's going on here. So in essence, think of Defang kind of like so it compiles this compose file into infrastructure code and then applies it to your platform. And when you ask for estimation, it actually does the same thing, but then it's invoking the cloud cost APIs for real-time numbers, right? So it transpiles this thing. It finds out, oh, I'll need a managed database. I need a managed Redis, managed language models, etc. Okay, what do they cost? And then it invokes all the SKUs, finds out the SKUs, and calls all those cost APIs. So the numbers you're getting here are real numbers. This is not like, if you copy paste a compose file in ChatGPT or Perplexity or something, it'll spit out some numbers, right? But it's not exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
How do people iterate on these compose files? Like, if I were to change my Postgres and redeploy, like, what happens?
Yeah. So early on, we actually had we were thinking of making infrastructure code super easy and cloud agnostic. And so for a while, we had our own files. But then everybody already had a compose file. So now we use that as the input. And what's good about it is it's an open standard. Docker opened it like a few years ago. The LLMs are well trained on it. So any changes you want to make, you can ask the LLM. You can make them yourself. In fact, the editor has the JSON schema, very likely, for compose YAMLs. And any changes you make, you just do the same command again, right? So Defang will also do the drift detection. We'll make any changes. We'll do builds if they're needed, right? So if the compose file says my service comes from source code, then it'll upload the source code to your cloud account, starts the build in your cloud account. So actually on the developer machine, there's not much happening. Everything happens in your cloud account.
Yeah. As you can see, it's being built within code build and cloud build, which is GCP, and you can see the build logs coming back to us right now. So it's containerizing both applications on your AWS and your GCP account. If I quit this CLI, it will still run. Like, you don't have to be in the CLI for it to run. It never runs on your computer.
Yeah, the CLI is just streaming logs, right?
Yeah.
And once you kick it off, it's just streaming logs. Okay. You cannot have a interrupted deployment or something like that.
Yeah.
And how do you deploy this? Like, if I configure a server in here, is it like deployed on like a Lambda, Fargate, and all that?
So we kind of want to. Right now, it's very likely going to be on Amazon. It's going to be Elastic Container Service, very likely, and on Google, very likely Cloud Run. I say very likely because there are some limitations to those two. Yeah. So, for example, if your service needs a GPU, which was very common 2 years ago, not so common anymore because now everybody uses like the model APIs kind of. But if you add in your compose file that I need a GPU, we'll provision a GPU for you as well. And ECS cannot do that, right? So we'll have to get an EC2. And on Cloud Run, you end up with Compute Engine, but you don't really care. So we kind of want to leave that, abstract that away. Also because there's value in making that dynamic in a way. Like if the application changes, for example, you have a service that gets hit once a week because it's behind the schedule or something. That would be good in a Lambda. But if you get a lot of traffic, now then you want to have a 24/7 service up and running and scale that horizontally. So we want Defang to have the smarts to do that in the future. So now it's not that dynamic yet. We have some feedback there, but that's where we want to go. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see the AWS actually just finished mounting. So it activated and the app is running now. We'll probably go hit it in a second. But I also just did estimation on GCP and one on AWS, and you can see that the MCP server was able to tell me that hosting on GCP was about $10 cheaper than AWS. Yeah.
Ask it to did it compare? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, $8.75. Yeah, it was $34 for AWS and $26 for GCP.
Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and let's see here. Oh, am I still sharing here? Or
Yep.
Yeah.
sorry, I thought I lost you for a second. Yeah, God, I try to get this lake, but my terminal is too big now. Okay. There you go. I got it. Okay. So we can open now.
So this is a defang.app URL, because if you don't specify a URL in your compose file, then we'll just create one under defang.app. But you can also specify in the compose file. It's called domain name. It's part of the standard, and then Defang will do all the SSL, DNS stuff that's needed to hook that up, right?
Yeah, like this, and then you can put in wherever you want, and that would be your domain name. But on the service that you're trying to link. But yeah, for now, this is just the one we made. But yeah, you can see it works. Let's see what the Mastra's team's been up to. See what recent commits you made. But yeah, you can see the LM gets called in. It works, and there's no keys involved. Everything is provisioned through the service account. So.
Yeah, so it's using Vertex AI. We hook up Vertex AI if you deploy to GCP, Bedrock if you deploy to AWS. So it never leaves your account. Basically, it's not reaching out to any third party. That's kind of also where a lot of the value lies.
Yeah, and we can see here if it loads, you can go into your own account and you can see that it's been deployed, and you can see here 2 minutes ago. See, and
that's legit, dude. That is legit.
Yeah. If you go to AWS too, we actually, because we did 2 clouds, right? It's a cloud agnostic, so we can actually you can send all 3 clouds at one if you want, but like we only did 2 for today. But yeah, we went to ECS here. You'll see that we have one here, Mastra, just got deployed as well. So, and then this is running on AWS. Oh, that's not the one I'm looking for, I guess. But yeah, this one just got finished. Did it finish? Yeah. And we can go into the AWS one, and then we have 2 replicas on 2 clouds. Oh, I think it's still going through some provisioning.
Yeah, that takes a while for the whole load balancer and everything to be happy. So.
Okay, yeah, but the GCP one finished. But yeah, as you can see, we also are, we're not just writing gibberish. We're partnered with Google and AWS. So we went through their Well Architect Partner Program. So the infrastructure we're writing isn't just going to be, garbage architecture. It's been, stamped and approved by our partners. And it's well trusted. We make all the IAM roles, load balancing, securities, all the production ready stuff you need. So.
Yeah, you guys must have seen that many times as well, right? A lot of the sample code and toys and tutorials that you find, you cannot run them in production as is. You have quite a lot of stuff you have to change there. So the samples that we publish in our samples repository, as well as the tool itself, we really want it to be production ready. Yeah, you should be comfortable doing a deployment with Defang and not think about it. We hook up observability. Well, it's all in your account. So if you want to go fancy with maybe Prometheus, Grafana, you just have to add it to your compose file. We'll just deploy that.
Wow. Very cool.
So the target users here, engineers who are not DevOps friendly or more DevOps friendly, like. Is there a gap here that was being filled?
So the target user. So up to now, I would say it's the beginners that they get AWS credit, but they have no clue how AWS works. So they're definitely a target user. But what's happening more and more often is that they just skip AWS altogether. They go to Vercel and don't even think about AWS, right? So so when they now they vibe coded their app, they're on Vercel, they're live, and they got a customer that says, "I love your thing, but there's no chance that I'm going to send this private data to this one-person SaaS," right? So the customer asks for, "I want a private deployment in my account," and they might be in a different cloud, right? Or then that's where Defang would be very valuable, even to the vibe coders.
Yeah, we had a friend of ours who built on Vercel, and then they finally got a government contract, and they have to be an AWS Gov Cloud.
There you go. Yeah.
Now they're changing their whole app to just be AWS, so they don't have to
Yeah.
deal with this shit anymore. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
on top of that-
that's a perfect use case, Fabi.
Yeah.
That is-
And on top of that, Vercel is an AWS reseller, right? So they like, I think it's like 5-6 times more expensive to host on Vercel than just straight on AWS or something.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely they take their margin, you know.
Yeah. So you're just posting on AWS but through like them. So I mean, this is the best way to go, guys.
That's how they get you, right? It's,
Yeah.
it's cheap to start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. How do people? So, say you have some engineer developers, web developers who maybe want to deploy to clouds, GCP, AWS. Where do they go? Defang.io. Is that the best place to go?
Yeah, it's all self-service, right? So you can download the CLI. The CLI is open source. You can also fork the repo if you want to make changes to it. We have an MCP server that you can try. You can deploy with that. We're preparing a major release early next year. So we're actually integrating our own agent, not just MCP server, so that the CLI will be able to interactively help you go through all the cloud setup and all of that. Kind of the major pain point now is getting you into the actual cloud account. So we're doing some features around that. So you hopefully never have to go to the AWS dashboard and still be able to deploy there. That's kind of the ultimate.
I mean, that sounds like the dream. Maybe in a few months when you get that big launch, come back and show us the agent you built.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
Also, I'm really interested in talking more about some other stuff with you guys. So we should just chat after.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, anytime.
Yeah.
Reach out to us. I'm on X, Twitter, Blue Sky, Lio Lunesu. There's not many with that name, so find me there.
Yeah. I don't have much. I just have LinkedIn, so you just probably look for my name.
Yeah,
it's still here somewhere.
Find Kevin in Discord.
You can find Kevin in the.
Oh yeah. Actually, I mean, crazy thing. I have another PR ready for you. I found another bug in the Mastra.
Send it over, brother.
Yeah, please send it over. We appreciate PRs. All right, it was great having you both. And
thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll definitely have you on again when you have more to show after this next big launch.
Yeah.
We'll see you.
See you guys.
All right.
And then there was us.
All right, the show must go on. This is a long show because of some technical difficulties, and we got started a little late, but we still have a little bit of AI news, and then we're gonna have to get out of here. We're gonna keep it quick.
Yeah,
we got a lot to do, other stuff to do. You know, the actual job.
Yeah,
this is just what we do for fun.
This is our ARR right here.
Yeah. This is all right. So some OpenAI stuff. Because OpenAI is always trying to do some things. You know, we did mention OpenAI has announced their Code Red, which is they're trying to focus more on their core products, but they've also, had some other things. They released a new proof of concept study where they trained a GPT-5 thinking variant to admit whether the model followed instructions. So they call it the confessions method. So rather than asking, it's like just getting the original LLM, they basically trained this very specific model that has like a separate path that evaluates if it did something or if it confessed to like some kind of failure or some kind of guess, some kind of hallucination. So it says AI systems are becoming more capable. We want to understand them as deeply as possible. So sometimes the model takes a shortcut. I think we've probably all seen this, or optimizes for the wrong objective, or just plain makes something up.
Yeah.
Opus is still guilty of this. I use Conductor and I have like multiple Git work trees, right? And I thought I had this, I copied some code examples from a framework or from a different repo. And I wanted it to just like evaluate and say like, hey, like how would we do this? And it made it up because it wasn't actually in that work tree. It was in the other, it was in my main Git branch. And so but of course it wouldn't tell me that. I just made it up and I thought it was right. And I started looking at it and I was like, that's not right.
Yeah.
You just made this up.
Yeah, it lied to me. It said that Mistral does not support JSON prompt injection. I was like, how do you know that? And it was like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just figured.
Yeah, I just guessed. I just made it up. So I think, so the whole idea is confessions, this confessions, they don't prevent mistakes, but they make them visible. They say like, here's a mistake that it made. So in some ways it's kind of like running evals, right? But in this case, it's very specifically trained on a GPT-5 version. So it's kind of interesting.
Look at Lee's comment there too. Watch this.
Yeah, watch this. All right. Google's making moves as they sometimes do.
Dude, Google's coming for your
Yeah,
throats.
Google's coming. All right, so Google has released their Workspace Studios, where anyone can build a custom AI agents in minutes to delegate the daily grind, automate daily tasks, and focus on the work that matters instead. I think Google has they have this same kind of thing in different places, like Google AI Studio. You can do some stuff,
Yeah,
like
Vertex
Gemini, yeah, Vertex. Now they have it in Workspace Studio, but they're just trying to get it everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's anything
And it's
necessarily.
Python only.
Is
That's
it?
a shame. If you want to add like a studio agent, you have to use a lane chain or a crew AI.
Well, maybe that should change.
Or you can use A to A, which once again they're pushing that shit.
Yeah. So speaking of Mistral, which you announced, this came out, I think, the day after our show last week, so we didn't cover it. But Mistral released some models. So the Mistral 3 family of models. So they say it's the world's best small models. They have their Instruct models, Mistral Large or Frontier class, and they're kind of comparing it to some other open source models using the ELO score. Got some mixed reviews though.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what people are saying. So I think maybe it was Theo or had some comments on some benchmarks that said like they're not very good.
Yeah.
Like maybe it was a little bit of a letdown, and then also a little bit of controversy around, where did they maybe borrow some things on some of they basically announced it as it's their own model, but maybe they kind of borrowed some stuff from DeepSeek. So saying, and again, not proven on any of this stuff, but distilling DeepSeek while claiming it was their own model. And, then there's some from Sam Page here says,
the slot profiles.
that it basically, the analysis of their slot profiles confirms it is basically, very similar to, DeepSeek v3. So, who knows if it is or it isn't. I don't know. There's maybe some evidence that it could be. But I think technically it's not against the terms of like what you could use DeepSeek for, but it is probably, you should probably admit it if you're doing it.
Yeah,
so,
hopefully it's not true, but it probably is.
Yeah. All right, so that's what's going on with Mistral. This was interesting. If you're in the JavaScript world, this one will definitely be interesting to you. This came out last week, and I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. It shouldn't have, but it kind of did. That TanStack AI. So TanStack has a whole bunch of different packages, like TanStack Start and TanStack Router, TanStack Query. Now they have TanStack AI. So powerful open source AI SDK with a unified interface across multiple providers. So you can use it with any model, different languages they even want to support, different, vanilla TypeScript, React. So they basically want to be essentially just a new AI SDK. So I think they're going right after kind of Vercel's AI SDK, pretty similar in some of the stuff it wants to do with some of the stuff we do at Mastra, but it caught some attention when it was released last week.
Are they going to go full on agent framework, you think, or just this library?
I would guess if it goes the way of AI SDK, they're going to try to if it gets enough adoption, you have to think they're going to add. It's the natural thing to add in. So we'll see.
Bring your TanStack agents to Mastra in the new year.
Yeah, maybe we'll just support TanStack agents in Mastra. Who knows?
Yeah, why not, right?
So yeah, but that was interesting. So if you're a fan of the TanStack stack, maybe give that a look. And this will be the last thing we talk about, and we're not going to cover it other than just showing you that it exists. We talked about it. It was funny. We talked about it with Laurie a little bit. So OpenRouter has kind of released a state of AI. I think, of course, they have certain types of data that makes it that they can report on. And it's pretty huge, right? But they have some nice charts in here that kind of tell you, and you've seen some of these get shared across X and other places, but you can see like the decline of DeepSeek's dominance, open source market. And this is, of course, all people that go through Open Router.
Yep.
But it is very interesting to see the trends, and you might be able to say like, oh, these are the popular models, or this is maybe a model I should try. This is like the uptick of reasoning models. So go to, openrouter.ai/state-of-AI, and I think you're going to get a lot of good information. So if you're interested in what the trends are. And with that, anything else before we close this thing up? This has been quite a wild ride of a show.
No, it was really fun in the new studio with all the trouble. But
yeah, we'll figure that out for next week.
I'm excited for 2026. I'm excited for the show too, and for everyone listening. We're going to be making moves next year on a lot of things.
Yeah. So we appreciate you all for tuning in. This has been AI Agents Hour. We had some technical difficulties today. We'll figure those out. We are trying to do some new things. We're going to try to up the production value of this a little bit. We are the top 20% of Spotify shows, apparently.
We are the chosen ones.
So if you haven't given us a 5-star on Spotify, if you would like to give us a 5-star, please go to Spotify, give us a 5-star review. And apparently they told me in our report that we need to ask more people to follow us on Spotify, which is a thing I didn't even know. So please follow the show on Spotify as well. And if you want to give us less than a 5-star review, please find something else to do.
Like Jesus.
Yeah, we don't like that. But you can also check us out on YouTube, check us out on X, all the different places, right? And you can follow Abby and myself on X as well. If you're looking for, questionable follows, we're about as good as you can get. And meet Ryan Evans. Thanks for tuning in.
See you the next one, dude.
And Sebastian has some comment from before. Thank you for tuning in, Sebastian. All the other people that tuned in, we appreciate you. We'll see you next week.
Peace.